I was reading on the front page of the Daily Telegraph today. It says, the rhetoric of Osborne with the policies of Brown. So were you getting all nostalgic in the press gallery yesterday?
Yeah, the best of both worlds there. My goodness. I don't know about you, but I felt sharply put in my place yesterday. I was being told what to do. I was being told how much more of my money I have to pay to support the system. The system is back in control. The ink monitors are telling us what to do. And it all felt terribly patronising. There he is. There's your head ink monitor with the head prefect next to him. And I just got the impression that the blob is exacting revenge on us for Brexit, for the past few years of when they haven't been entirely in the boss seat. And, you know, it's jolly good for us, isn't it, to take a beating like that and to give up more of our money so that they can continue on their merry way.
And what reaction did you spot on the backbenchers? Were people sort of pulling their hair out? Were they crying into their hankies? What was the reaction on the Conservative benches from your vantage point?
I saw Sir Charles Walker, MP, Conservative MP for Broxbourne, sitting in a distant corner, actually with both hands up, covering his face, rubbing his eyeballs as if trying to expunge the vile jellies so that they wouldn't have to witness this terrible socialist deed. I saw there's a woman called Kelly Tolhurst from Rochester and Strood, and she was sitting there with her arms crossed, and she looked like Les Dawson. She had, do you remember when Les Dawson played the old woman and settled her chops into a very sort of fed-up expression? That was Kelly yesterday. And Jacob Rees-Mogg was sitting just slightly back with a finger up behind his ear, and he didn't move for the whole 55 minutes or whatever of the torment we had from Jeremy Hunt. I don't think the Conservative backbenchers, well, you would know better than I do, you two, but I didn't think they were entirely impressed. The Labour MPs looked rather surprised and pleased by the whole thing, because it's all extremely redolent of the new Labour years, and we even had 2 or 3 Blairites being given jobs by the government. So we're just back. I mean, we're just back, basically, to 1997, but with higher tax rates.
And I was going to ask you about that. When the name Patricia Hewitt was announced as doing the efficiency review for the NHS, somebody, Hunt, actually called for her resignation back in 2007. So I just wondered again, what was the reaction of the MPs, particularly the Conservative MPs, to go, oh my gosh, this is Blair?
Well, in the tribal pit of the Commons, as you know, Esther, there was a lot of yah-booing from the Tories, pointing at Labour, saying, ha, 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 we've got one of yours. But I think it then took about 2 seconds before they realised, oh, my goodness, is that ghastly creature Hewitt? And she of the treacliest, stickiest, most annoying voice in politics. And she's going to be back telling us how to behave ourselves. It's sort of almost beyond belief that Patricia Hewitt should come back. I mean, next we'll have Jeff Hoon back in the Ministry of Defence. And the Tory MPs, I think, will live to regret this, because not only is Hewitt an extremely annoying personality politically, she may be a perfectly nice person, personally, it has to be said, but politically she drove people nuts. But I think more importantly, there is the political drift here, the political significance of centrism being the thing. And really, you've got a Conservative leadership that is running scared of the establishment, is running scared of the blob. It's appeasing Whitehall. And it's a sorry thing to see when they've got a majority of 80.
I thought the bravest thing that Jeremy Hunt did yesterday, Quentin, was he ignored the pleadings of a certain Member of Parliament for Tatton, who the previous day had given Prime Minister's questions, and you'll have seen that Member for Tatton basically berating the government, saying that you can't put taxes up unless you scrap HS2, and there I was thinking, well, I'm scared of her, they must be scared of her too, and yet they didn't scrap HS2 despite being given a lecture by the Member for Tatton. Were you as shocked as me that they...
Of course they didn't. It's one of their grand projets. They're just like the French, and they love these things, the blob, because they can go to the openings, they can give out contracts to big building companies. There may be, who knows, there may be a little bit of gravy in that, and also they can pose and pout and preen. This is the sort of thing that the elite loves. And they can then maybe, when they'll be the only ones able to afford the tickets, they can ride up and down on the things when it's eventually built in about the year 2060, by the time we'll all be pushing up the daisies. But the member for Tatton, Esther, you were not alone, because yesterday I think Sir Edward Lee had a go, or somebody did, and said, what about this stupid thing which is costing, according to one estimate this week from another MP in the Commons, 147 billion. And Jeremy Hunt replied, no, because it's very important to keep infrastructure going. Well, what about the infrastructure, not only of our souls and of our morale, but also of our personal finances? And that seems to get forgotten and pushed to one side, because the big establishment projects are more important somehow. It's lunacy. And there is also, for instance, I mean, people say,
Quentin,
saving...
Quentin, will you stay with us there? Because I want to bring somebody else in who wrote a report, who used to work for Boris Johnson as an advisor on transport, and that's Andrew Gilligan is with us, saying that HS2, basically a waste of money. It isn't going to have the benefit that people talked about. It isn't going to do the levelling up people talked about. It could go as high as 200 billion. And yet what we have seen is people up and down the country now going to be squeezed, going to be paying all that extra taxes, where really an out-of-date project that isn't value for money could have been scrapped. So stay with us, Quentin, and here's Andrew Gilligan.
Esther, that is absolutely right. This is a ludicrously bad project. Even the government admits the official benefit-cost ratio, which they quietly published in June this year, admits that for every £1 the country spends on it, it will get back, over 60 years, mind, 90p worth of benefits. And so, you know, this isn't going to help growth. It's going to harm growth. It's going to take money out of the economy.
I thought you were a fan of HS2 when you were in Downing Street.
No,
Andrew,
I did my level best to get it killed. I managed to get managed to help get the eastern leg chopped off, but Boris was a big fan.
But people are saying, and we've also got Laurie Lurdworth as well, top economist with us, people are now saying that really was the start of the end for the Conservative Party with that, statement there, that financial statement there. What do you think, Andrew?
What, the one yesterday?
Yes.
Look, I can see the strategy. I think they pitch everyone into gloom. They say it's all terrible. Everything's really difficult, highest taxes since the war, and then next year and the year after, they can start saying, actually, it's getting better, inflation is on the way down, interest rates are down, look, we're fixing it, and here's some tax cuts. I think that's probably the strategy. Load on the pain now, and then it all makes it look better in a year's time.
Laurie?
But we haven't loaded on the pain now.
Exactly.
We have given people what appears to be a brutal assessment. Jeremy Hunt is trying not to be political. He is trying to be the guy who has a handle on the numbers. I'm going to tell you something you don't want to hear, except for the pain is coming. The pain is coming after an election. So in terms of what's best for the economy, I was happy to see that some of these spending cuts and some of these tax rises are backloaded, because the last thing that we need right now, despite everything that happened with Liz Truss, is a fiscal tightening. We are in a recession, according to the OBR. It doesn't make sense to tighten fiscal policy right now. It's a little bit of, two fingers up to Labour, because you may well be inheriting this.
And what I read, it's 80% of those fiscal constraints are going to come after the general election. It's 20% now. 80. I was going to say game of two halves. It was a financial statement of two halves. 80% of it coming after 2025. If Quentin Letts is there,
is Quentin still there? I wanted to ask you, Quentin, Jeremy Hunt has got a very nice bedside manner, hasn't he, really? I mean, he's very soothing to listen to, and he seems very reasonable and whatever. Do you think that if the messenger delivers it in such a nice, calm, amiable way, does the medicine taste any better coming from somebody like Jeremy Hunt, do you think, in Parliament?
I think it helps in the arena of the Commons, yes, because that's part of the consideration, and it goes down very well in Whitehall. But I think that the real test will come when people look at their pay packets and see how much tax they are paying. The one good thing about yesterday, philosophically or sort of longer term, strategically, as they say, may be that the name of tax is besmirched and the idea of tax becomes less acceptable. I know that the BBC are always trying to tell us that tax is a wonderful thing, but looking at today's newspaper headlines, you get the impression that maybe tax may not be the most fashionable thing. And so longer term, it may make it, I mean, presumably the Tories are going to get wiped out, except for in 2 seats, perhaps, at the next election. It may make it harder for the next government to continue with high taxation. There may be a point at which tax stops becoming a legitimate public communal endeavour and starts looking like legalised theft. And I think we've probably reached that point.
See, he's such an optimist, isn't he? He's such an... I wish I could have your boundless optimism.
But they won't be happy with the front pages. Years of pain ahead. You know, the Tories have written the sort of the script for the end of their days. They cannot be happy with that. I mean, Rishi and Jeremy Hunt could not have been expecting that, could they? They must have thought they'd pulled a rabbit out of a hat. They'd deliver this, and and people would take it. Because do you think we are such a stoical nation? Did you think they thought we'd take it well?
Well, they will be. They probably will have been expecting the Daily Mail to give them a monstering, but my goodness, it's unhappy reading the Mail this morning for the government. The thing about the left is you could never really appease the left. They'll go on attacking you. I mean, if you're a Tory and you try and go to the centre, it happens. Mrs. Thatcher was right. If you try to stand in the middle of the road, you just get mown down both ways. So you get attacked not only by the left, but you also get attacked last night by Jacob Rees-Mogg. And I think there's certainly, I mean, Andrew may be right in that there may be a bit of dressing back to the right before the general election. There may be some of the alarmism may have been very overdone in order to allow a bit of drift back to the right before the election. But I don't know. I reckon it's gone a long way.